Hi everybody. So this week I'm going to make it kind of the last week of the flowers project, and I thought I would tackle a little bit of blossom painting, which is the sort of thing I enjoy doing. This is more my kind of flower painting, sort of flowers within the landscape. So this, I'll show you a couple of examples. I think this was one from a few years ago in oils, so I've got a couple of recent to this. And this is up at Westcliff Parade, and I've painted this sort of scene quite a few times. Very nice area to paint. This one was from just a week or two ago, this time in acrylics, which I might have shown you last session, at Sutton Road Cemetery. We've got lovely blossom trees. They've probably gone over by now, but a week or two ago they were looking glorious. This one, acrylics though, so I was trying acrylics, and that's what I'm going to use today. I thought I'd try acrylics today. One of the difficulties I found with the oils is sometimes you've got areas where bits are sort of showing through, so things like bits of sky and then green, so blues, then greens, then the reds, and there's a danger of it all getting a bit muddy and picked up. So it is doable, but I've always found that a little bit of a challenge. So I've been experimenting a little bit with the acrylics, and I'll show you the other. So this week's demo, they're the two from this week's demos. And with these two, they're both acrylics. I've been also experimenting with try different sort of brush work. So these boards are quite old and got lots of paint on anyway, so they've got a bit of a texture, kind of a brushy texture anyway, which I've tried to use a little bit. So to try and get some sort of broken brush work a little bit. And on this one I also tried a little bit of splattering in amongst ordinary brush marks, just to kind of vary it a little bit. Because sometimes I feel like particularly these older ones, they can get a little bit dotty, so I'm just trying to vary it a little bit. So that some areas are more in focus than others, so that's been my challenge. So I'd maybe just do a little corner of this one. Just get that brushy down. One thing that I've found just through experience of painting blossom trees is it's been quite important to get dark enough to sort of go in for the darks first. So because I've got acrylics, these will dry fairly quickly, and I might just get something down that's fairly dark to start with. The other thing that I found is that you need, for some of these pinky blossoms, you need a very vibrant pink to start with. So something like a rose or magenta works quite nicely. I find that the alizarin crimson sometimes is a little bit too cool. It's not quite vibrant enough. So particularly flower painting, that's where sometimes I need to go a little bit lighter. So to start with, I'm just going to mix a little bit of a slightly purpley shade, and just get some paint down, just roughly where I want to work. We'll just sort of kind of look in this section here, and this is quite, just fairly, just getting a big shape to start with. Yeah. So I'm not going to do that. Maybe I'll do maybe a little bit up to the trunk, so you can see where that would be. So just go a little bit darker with the trunk, but I'm not too worried about painting too much of the trunk in too early. The other thing is some of this almost sort of blends into the shadows as well. So that's, sometimes establishing the shadows as well as the tree trunk can be quite a good thing. Just a few little bits of highlight, maybe a little bit light on there. So we've got a little bit of light kind of catching bits of the trunk. That's too light. Just soften that out. And darken that again. There's a colour. Yeah, so some sort of quite dark shadows on the side there. And then probably work some of these deeper shadows in. This is obviously acrylics, so I want to just make sure my brushes don't dry out. So around here, I'll add either I've got some purple here or some blue just into the mix, just to make a really dark mix, and just a tiny bit of brown, just so it's not too purpley. But yeah, it's really quite deep shadows in here. Just a little bit of the magenta in with this is probably just about still touch dry, not particularly thin the paint. It's acrylic paint, but I'm just kind of scumbering it. Almost like the thickness it comes out the tube. It's got a little bit lighter with the pink there. And then anywhere where there's, so that'd be almost like the darkest tone, and then there could be like a mid-tone. Perhaps get some of those sort of mid-tones. And I'm not going to focus in too early on individual flowers. I'm really trying to make sort of masses of dark, masses of slightly mid-tone, masses of lighter tones to start with. And what I tend to look for is almost like waves going through, like movement through the bloom. So there can be I'm trying to avoid just doing like a clone dotty mark, because it will just look very, very false. So just try and sort of link forms together a little bit. So that'd be that. Maybe add a little bit. I think that might be a slightly different pink I've got there. Try a bit of that. And then next thing would be, so far I've not used any white. I'll just go for another brush to save washing that one. We're getting it too wet. But perhaps at this stage, perhaps add a little bit of white, and then we could go for some of these lighter areas. So again, it's the same sort of process of looking. I mean, generally, if I was painting that as a scene, I would paint the sky first and probably these background bits. But just today, just going to focus on the tree. So go for sort of some of these mid-tone areas. And some lights down here, and then a bit more here. And really just trying to vary the brush marks to try and create a lively, and this is a very cheap brush, but it's actually making some quite nice marks. I quite like that. And then go a little bit lighter still, and then probably, this is where I'm trying to perhaps suggest individual blooms, like that. And then finally, just where the light's really catching, certain bits. I'm not going to do it everywhere, but just where I've lighted it already, perhaps some even sort of lighter bits. And even with a biggish brush, you can make some quite small marks. Can't actually see that. I'll do some darker ones just at the edge. You can make some tiny little dots, and actually twisting the brush, trying to get it to place on a different place, you'll get a slightly different mark. So, I mean, that's one of the qualities I enjoy about painting, is where you've got interesting brushwork and lively brushwork, and then that goes to suggest the forms that we're seeing, qualities we're seeing. So yeah, some of those are a little bit chunky, but I could possibly then go in with perhaps a smaller brush, just for a few, a little bit of variety, just some smaller marks as well. And then that then starts to, perhaps that's too much, but it just starts.
You use quite flat brushes, do you think?
I think I have, yeah. That was once a fill, but they're all away, virtually all away. But that's nice with little dotty marks. Yeah, I think, can be flats, but I think really just vary it. These are actually all bristle brushes, so they have a more kind of, perhaps a more robust mark. Whereas a nylon brush will make a smoother mark. So yeah, it depends what you want to do. And the other thing I did on some of the other demos was almost like do a little bit of dry brush. Almost like just, where it's dry, you could just kind of catch the surface. If you've got a textured surface, just get a sort of like dry mark, and that almost, I feel I want to blur that a little bit. Get a slightly out focus look. And the other thing would be to try a little bit of splattering. Again, if that's good, let's do it with white. A bit messy, you could do some rubber. You need the paint a little bit more fluid. Is that gonna? Yeah, a stiffish brush works for all that. But again, you could get some tiny little marks there. And then on this one, I can't see individual twigs particularly, but there may be some that you are doing. In which case, I probably would get a rigger. You know, say there was a branch coming out here, just a few, or up here. I tend to pop those in, maybe put a few of those marks in, then perhaps go back. I know when I've been outside painting trees, I'll sort of go backwards and forwards quite a bit. Maybe put a little bit. And the other thing you sometimes get is little bits of sky, not in this one particularly, but sometimes you'll get little bits of sky popping through, so you might need to go in with a little bit. And again, it's the sort of thing you need to be fairly careful to put it off and make it look convincing. Sometimes actually not having it quite, I find that not having it quite as bright as the sky over here, for instance. If it's like really bright here, I've sometimes gone a little bit lighter here and a little bit darker here, and that seems to work. Just some of the things I'm trying. So, and as I say, the same sort of thing with oils. You can, if you've got, a darkish pink and a lightish pink, that's fine. You can work those with oils. But I just thought it'd be quite interesting just to experiment with another medium a little bit. So as I say, this is probably if you're working on projects and obviously want to keep going, that's absolutely fine. Finish your paintings. Next week I thought I'd do a little bit on painting fabrics. So if you fancy having a go at that, or it could be drawing fabrics. So if you fancy trying that, maybe bring in a bit of fabric. I mean, you'll all be wearing something that you can probably take off, or just have a go at.
I'm ready already.
Yeah. So some sort of fabric, and I'll keep that going for a couple of weeks, I think. And then I think the project after that is landscapes. The other thing I thought is if you do get some nice weather, maybe I'll do an outdoor demo. I'll do a landscape plein air demo for it, particularly because I know one or two people are coming away on trips with me and things like that, to Suffolk and stuff like that. So yeah, that might be useful for people to do, in general. Okay.